In the studio with us is eNCA's social media editor, Gareth Edwards. Gareth, good morning and thank you very much for coming in.
Dan, always a pleasure.
Our headline story today talks about Parliament. We saw the end of that whole debate about the EFF. Now they have been suspended. Parliament this week as well. It's been the topical story for us.
It is, and it's still very, very big at the moment. I think a lot of people, a year ago, if you'd asked them, would they write off their Thursday evening to sit down and watch Parliament? Many would have said no. And that's, I think, what so much of the interest around Parliament has been a result of the EFF and actually what they've done. But now, of course, the questions are being asked, has it actually achieved anything? How long we've been covering these stories now, Dan, this year of the EFF protesting, filibustering, I think is that new word that everyone's now using as well. It's all great. It makes for good TV. But people are asking, it's taxpayers' money. What has actually happened?
And the substance of the debate that's been questioned. And also what's been unfortunate, and I was speaking to our resident commentator earlier, Angelo Fick, this morning, was saying the name calling, the unnecessary name calling and all kinds of gestures being used in Parliament. It's all been uncalled for. But they are in recess now, and we don't know what to expect next year, or maybe more of the same when they come back.
Well, this is what many people are asking. Now that the EFF, or at least 20 of these members have been suspended, is the House going to get back to its business, or has a new behavior, a new habit been formed now that the DA can see what happens and what you can get done, seemingly, if you protest enough? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when these 20 EFF members aren't in Parliament. How does the House then actually behave? Are they the main instigators, or are they just the spark to the fire?
Another big story, we started this week, having come out of a weekend with power blackouts, load shedding, ESCOM last weekend, as you can recall. That really hasn't gone away. This morning, we're warning again of more likely power cuts this weekend.
That's right. I'm afraid Andrew Etzinger, how would you not like to have his job, the ESCOM spokesperson for all the money in the world at the moment? We're now hearing it's all the way through December, festive season, Dan. This is not when you want your lights out, all the way up to March of next year as well. And I think if you take a look at how people have been reacting to the story, of course there's the anger. It's terribly inconvenient. More serious than that is the impact it has on our economy. But I think people are now beginning to reach a stage where it's just this resigned, you can almost hear people sighing. It's like, well, here we go again. How do we best deal with it? So I think the anger is now gone. There is an acceptance, but people still want to know, when are we going to come right? We're here in the year 2030, 2050. How long can we keep doing this?
The Minister of Public Enterprises, Lynn Brown, in Parliament yesterday saying the next 2 years are going to be tough because they've got I think one of the first part of Medupi Power Station will be coming on stream in December, and slowly that can improve on the load. But 2 years is still a long time, and as you say, the damage is doing to the economy. It's also an important thing to watch out for. So it looks like it's going to be a summer of rolling blackouts.
It is. It looks like it, especially with the rainy season, and this is always the problem. It starts becoming very complicated when ESCOM are talking about their power problems, and now the weather is being affected. How do you tell the difference? I think that's where people are getting a bit upset.
Yeah, in news this week in South Africa that everybody spoke about as well from overseas, we saw the Ferguson in Missouri in the United States breaking out into violent protests after that grand jury's decision not to charge Darren Wilson, the police officer who shot and killed 18-year-old Michael Brown in August.
And there's two parts of the story as well. We're looking at some of the images coming from around the world. These are some of the more dramatic images that we've been running on eNCA.com this week. Dan, you can see just Occupy Chicago. So it's gone beyond Ferguson in Missouri. It's New York, Washington, Chicago, and of course in Ferguson as well. You'll know the Macy's Day Parade over in New York, just ahead of, I think it's Thanksgiving this weekend.
Yes.
Protesters.
It's Thanksgiving today.
Thanksgiving today, so happy Thanksgiving to our American viewers, by the way. Ferguson protesters arrested there. But there's two parts to this story. There's the very logical part and there's the emotive part. This image here talks about it. Black Lives Matter. You speak to any political analyst over in the US, and this is the problem. Many blacks in these areas simply feel that they are not given the same recognition as the rest of the population. So yes, it is the killing of an unarmed young black teenager, but the rhetoric that it's now become is rights for black people in America.
And said it hasn't stopped because as we began this week in Cleveland, a 13-year-old black teenager was shot and killed for holding a toy gun. Well, another international story which touched many South Africans because we are a cricketing nation is the tragic death of Phil Hughes yesterday in Australia after being struck by a ball during a domestic match there on Tuesday.
That's right. You're asking a very poignant question this morning on Morning News Today as well, is has this now affected the way people perceive sport for their children as well? Is it now becoming a dangerous sport? And I think a lot of parents that I've certainly heard from, that I've spoken to, are concerned about the safety of cricket. Now, what you're seeing on screen at the moment, this is very, very interesting. I know William Lahong has been following this, our sports anchor. This is put out your bat on Twitter. Around the world, there's this new movement where the Sydney Cricket Ground are doing it, Proteas players doing it. They're putting out one bat or as many bats as you want to in honour of Phil Hughes. It's an interesting way of using social media as this little call to action to remember the man. It's poignant. We haven't got the photo here, but the Sydney Cricket Ground has one bat in the middle of the pitch with nothing else there. It's a wonderful
image. He was really a rising star for Australia. He debuted, by the way, for Australia in South Africa in 2009. And finally, Gareth, while we have you in the studio, closer home. Next week, Friday, 5th December, is the first anniversary of the death of Nelson Mandela. And as we've heard, as we've been reporting, government has outlined its plan. The main official ceremony will be held in Freedom Park in Pretoria, and they're asking all South Africans to be involved in honouring Madiba's name and celebrating his life.
Oh, that's right. This is partly how we're doing it as well, and you're exactly right. It's the entire country again next Friday going to be paying back or paying tribute to Nelson Mandela as well. We're doing it as well on eNCA.com. If we would love to see your photos. Think back a year. Where were you? Who were you with? What were you doing when you heard that news, when Jacob Zuma came out? Sally Baudet was on air when the news broke. Where were you when you heard that piece of news? We want to see your photos. How are you remembering Nelson Mandela a year later? Even videos, if you can. We'd love to see those.
And they're going to use a specific hashtag for it?
Yeah, we're going to bring it up for you now. I'm sure we are as well. The hashtag we're using for this is Remember Mandela. We're going to bring the hashtag up for you a little bit later. So if you have videos, you have photos, just tell us how you're going to remember what I think many people still consider, obviously, to be the father of the nation. We'd love to see those photos in the build-up to next week Friday. We'll use it on air. We'll use it on the website as well.
Thank you very much, Gareth. That's Gareth Edwards, eNCA social media editor, unpacking some of this week's biggest stories. Your sport and weather coming up next.